Welcome to this explainer. Look, let's be honest for a second. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you're giving someone your time, your absolute undivided attention, maybe even your love, and yet you still feel completely ignored? Like you're totally present, you're putting in all this effort, but you walk away feeling just fundamentally undervalued. Well, if that strikes a nerve, you are in the exact right place.
It's a really painful reality, isn't it? Feeling disrespected like that. You know, when people listen but they don't actually hear you, or they just kind of look right past you. Now, a lot of guys naturally point the finger at external things when this happens. They blame their lack of money, maybe their physical appearance, or they just chalk it up to terrible luck. But the source material we're digging into today reveals a very different truth. The real culprit here, it's not your bank account, it's your daily habits. It's those silent, invisible actions you take every single day that are actively destroying your self-respect and your personality. Okay, let's dive right into this. We're going to take 12 destructive habits from our sources and group them into 6 core lessons. 1. The illusion of respect. 2. Escaping the validation trap. 3. Building character through action. 4. Mastering mind and body. 5. The most destructive habit. And 6. Earning respect from within. Section 1. The illusion of respect. You know, we so often treat respect like it's some sort of transaction we can just negotiate for. But the Stoic perspective, it turns that entirely upside down. The respect you get from the outside world is really just a reflection of your internal state. Respect cannot be demanded. It must be earned through character. You literally cannot force anyone, whether that's a colleague, a friend, or a romantic partner, to respect you. It just doesn't work that way. Instead, you've got to become a guy who naturally commands respect simply by existing in the world. And how do you do that? By valuing yourself first. The world treats you exactly the way you treat yourself. If you don't value your own time and character, nobody else will either. Section 2. Escaping the validation trap.
This brings us to a huge trap that absolutely annihilates respect, relying entirely on external approval. First step is people-pleasing. Trying to make sure nobody is ever mad at you, that completely erases your own identity. Second is excessive neediness. If you're panicking over an unanswered text, staring at those little typing bubbles like you're trying to defuse a bomb, that kind of emotional dependency telegraphs incredible weakness. Third, the inability to set boundaries. Failing to say no doesn't make you a nice guy. It makes you someone who gets used. And finally, constantly seeking recognition. If your self-worth goes way up with a social media like and then completely crashes with a criticism, you are essentially a mental slave to the opinions of total strangers.
Now, what's really interesting here is how the Stoic philosopher Epictetus cuts right to the core of this. He says, if you want to please everyone, you lose your freedom. True strength isn't about being universally liked. It means being kind, sure, but also being firm. It means valuing your own conscience and your own boundaries way more than the applause of the crowd. When you stand firm in who you are, ironically, people respect you infinitely more than when you just bend to their every whim.
Section 3. Building character through action. So let's look at this next trap, which centers around how a lack of decisive action destroys not just a guy's credibility, but honestly the entire trajectory of his life. Breaking promises is massive here. Your word is your ultimate asset, right? If you say you'll do something and then you don't, your credibility just evaporates. Then there's chronic indecisiveness. Overthinking ruins opportunities because while you're busy analyzing, life is just passing you by. Living without a purpose, that makes you like a ship out in the middle of the ocean without a compass. Literally any wind will blow you off course. And lastly, always blaming others. Every single time you blame the economy, your boss, or your circumstances, you are literally handing your power straight over to them. The Stoic cure for this inaction trap is absolute, unflinching responsibility. Marcus Aurelius gave some perfect advice on this. Know the right thing to do, then do it. You see, more information isn't usually the answer we need. Action is. When you stop making excuses and when you start actually keeping your promises, especially the ones you make to yourself, people instinctively begin to trust and respect you. Responsibility breeds authority. It's really that simple. Section 4. Mastering mind and body. Letting your physical and emotional discipline slip sends a massive signal to the outside world. It shows a deep, profound lack of self-worth. Look, complaining fixes absolutely nothing. It just advertises that you're helpless and playing the victim. But let's really focus on neglecting your physical body for a second here. Your body is the vessel through which you experience life. If you neglect it, you're broadcasting to the world that you don't even value your own vessel. Contrast that with someone who defeats their own laziness, gets up, and actually goes to the gym. The gym doesn't just change your muscles, it builds this fundamental self-belief that you can do hard things. And that belief, it radiates confidence. And this brilliantly illustrates the emotional side of discipline. We so often see weak men reacting with anger, yelling, raising their voices, throwing tantrums just to fake a sense of authority. But a truly strong, stoic man, he responds with thought. He remains perfectly calm when he's insulted or rejected. He absolutely refuses to let someone else's chaos dictate his internal peace.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is this: whoever controls your emotions controls you. It is really that simple. As Aurelius reminds us, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. If an insult makes you lose your temper, you're basically a puppet on a string for them. True power is feeling that anger, acknowledging it, but then choosing a calculated, thoughtful response instead of some destructive, explosive reaction. Section 5. The most destructive habit.
Let's move on and see how this all builds, because beneath the neediness, the complaining, and the lack of discipline lies one foundational root cause. What is the single most destructive habit? This right here is the silent killer. It's the one that doesn't just cause a few arguments, it destroys a man's life entirely from the inside out, infecting literally every single decision he makes.
And here it is. Habit 12, not knowing your worth, believing you are fundamentally inadequate, which leads to begging for love, over-explaining, and tolerating disrespect. When you secretly harbor this feeling that you just aren't good enough, you overcompensate, you over-explain yourself, you beg for scraps of affection, and honestly, worst of all, you tolerate disrespect because subconsciously you think it's what you deserve. But listen to me, your inherent value doesn't come from your job title or your relationship status or how much money is sitting in your checking account. Your value comes from your humanity, your capacity for reason, and your character. Once you deeply realize that, you'll stop accepting anything less than respect.
Section 6. Earning respect from within.
So, how do we actually fix this? Let's look at how this internal philosophical transformation naturally alters how the external world perceives you. Think of this Stoic shift as your new blueprint. 1. Build your internal character. 2. Control your emotional reactions. 3. Keep your word and take responsibility. And 4. Pursue a meaningful purpose. The journey is quite simple, even if it isn't easy. When you stop trying to bend the world to your will, when you stop begging for attention and instead relentlessly focus on these internal pillars, man, everything changes. You don't have to demand respect anymore. The world's perception of you effortlessly shifts because you've become a structurally sound, truly grounded individual. I know, looking at a big list of destructive habits can feel pretty overwhelming, but Stoicism is highly practical, and it definitely does not demand instant perfection from you. My advice to you today, based on these sources, is super simple. Change just one habit today. Pick just one of these bad habits we've discussed and start fixing it right now. Maybe today's the day you finally stop complaining, or maybe it's the day you finally set a boundary. Remember, a strong man isn't built in a day. He's built through small, compounding daily decisions.
I want to leave you with this thought as we wrap up. How are you viewing yourself right now? Before you spend another second worrying about how your friends, your boss, or a romantic interest sees you, really ask yourself that question. Because the rest of the world is simply watching how you treat yourself, and they're taking notes. The standard you set for yourself is the absolute ceiling for how others will treat you. It's time to claim your own self-respect.